Next section, pharynx and esophagus. Kind of a shorter section because this is more of a tube. So the pharynx is a cavity that's right behind your mouth. So the pharynx is a cavity, it's an opening. The esophagus is the tube, and when we looked at our cat, we saw that. So it's the tube that leads to the stomach. So from the pharynx or mouth opening to the stomach. So the pharynx itself connects the nasal and the oral cavities along with your larynx and esophagus. So basically it's where it kind of all comes together. The nasopharynx would be the top portion closest to your nose. Oropharynx is the middle closest to your mouth. And laryngopharynx would be the bottom part closest to your larynx. So the name of the area deals with where it's at. Oro means oral, it's closest to the mouth. So if I look at this, I can see, so the pharynx, like I said, is an opening. Nasopharynx is the top part. It's going to lead up to your nose. Oropharynx is basically right at the back of your mouth. And then your laryngopharynx is down here, which your larynx area is right here, so it's right by there. So the name of the pharynx basically tells you what portion it's in. Swallowing basically has three parts. The first part, when I talked about that ball, is called a bolus. So when you put food in your mouth, you're going to chew it, it's going to mix with saliva, and by the time you swallow it, it has kind of compacted and mushed and becomes a bolus, which is almost kind of like a ball shape. It's forced into the oropharynx, so typically when you chew, when you go to swallow, your tongue helps to push that food back. Sensory receptors that are in your pharynx sense that, oh, food is coming in, and that's going to trigger the actual swallowing reflex. And when you swallow, your soft palate and your uvula are going to rise up, so they block that nasal area. The hyoid bone and the larynx are going to lift, and that's going to close off the larynx and your tracheal area, so nothing also gets into your lung area. The tongue presses against the soft palate, seals off the front of the oral cavity. Pharyngeal muscles then start to contract. It's going to pull the pharynx itself upward. The laryngopharynx is going to relax, and that's going to open up the esophagus. And then this peristalsis is going to occur. So a peristaltic wave begins in the pharynx, goes into your esophagus, and is going to push down. The third stage then is when peristalsis takes it through the entire esophagus down into your stomach. Esophagus itself is a straight collapsible passageway tube through the diaphragm opening. So the esophageal hiatus, your diaphragm is that thin piece of muscle, and there's an opening, this esophageal hiatus, where the esophagus goes through your diaphragm. The esophagus is very collapsible. So when we looked at the cat, the trachea is rigid and round. The esophagus sits underneath it, and it's very collapsible so that when food goes through it, it can open and squeeze. So the esophagus is very flexible. Mucus glands are scattered throughout the submucosa of the esophagus. It's going to help to continue to moisten and lubricate food as it goes through. And then the lower esophageal sphincter is a round muscle again. It's going to prevent regurgitation of stomach contents into the esophagus. If this doesn't work very well, you may get heartburn. A lot of times when people have heartburn, it's some of the stomach contents that leak back up into the esophagus a little bit. And sometimes this sphincter muscle is not working properly, and that is why some of that seeps back up. And that can actually cause wear and tear on your esophagus. Also, I will continue there. People who are bulimic and force themselves to throw up can cause damage to their esophagus, to their teeth, because that stomach acid is very acidic and it wears and can break down your esophagus and your teeth.